Hi, I'm Lydia Rackham, and I'm doing books from a candy dish, where I just pick a book of mine out of this candy dish and talk about it for 10 minutes or a little bit longer sometimes. Um, that, just depends on where the spirit leads. But yeah, it's just off the cuff. I haven't thought about it. I don't even know what I'm going to. Okay, let's see what the next one is. Beowulf. Okay. Woo, long ago. Okay. Set a timer for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, counting down. Okay, so this is the Beowulf Seeker. Ooh, so I in high school I took AP English classes. Shocker. Um, Junior year, senior year. When I at my other school where I went, they didn't have such a thing, but then when I switched schools for my junior and senior years, they did, and so I just ate that up. And I was introduced to a lot of literature that I had never met before, like Chaucer and some more Shakespeare, Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost. Very good and important things to read. But the very first thing open with my junior year was Beowulf, and I didn't even know it existed. But as soon as I read this thing, I thought, where has this been my whole life? It seemed, it was so familiar because we had seen, The Lord of the Rings had just come out not that long before that, well, yeah, a few years. And then I had read the books, and Beowulf sounded like Lord of the Rings. And soon I found out why. It's because Tolkien was a professor of this exact literature, and he actually wrote his own book about Beowulf. And you can see in the dragon in Beowulf is very like Smaug, because of the attitude of the dragon, um, about him being the anti-king, the anti-good king. See, you don't really know like what's up with the dragon, but at the time that it was very cool to learn about what alliteration is, or what a kenning is. A kenning is another word, another set of words for a thing, which they use constantly in Lord of the Rings. So like a wave walker is a ship. A ring giver is a king. So like there's all kinds of those. And like alliteration is when the letters, at the beginning of words are the same. So like the first line of Beowulf in my favorite translation is, "Lo, praise the prowess of people kings, of spear-armed Danes in days long sped. We have heard, and what honor the Aethelings won." And like Aetheling, that sounds a lot like some words that Tolkien uses. Say it like Erolingas, it's just all very similar. And so I actually love the language of the story more than the story itself. Whereas to tell the story, you'd be a little bit like, okay, but I just love the language of it. And it's actually two stories: Beowulf and Grendel, and then Beowulf and the dragon when he's older. And it's just such grand language, and it's so old. I don't know if you know this, but German and English were the same language once upon a time. And then they split this way as the peoples went different directions. And so Beowulf is the oldest written thing in both German and English. Of course, neither one of us, modern Germans or modern English speakers, can read the original Beowulf because it's in Old English. When people say Old English and they think it's Shakespeare, that's not it. Old English is not Shakespeare. Old English is unintelligible to what you're speaking right now. Um, so it's, it all gets into my really nerdy, languagey person. And so all of it is the big package. And um, my ancestry goes back to all the way back, way, would probably on one side would probably go all the way back to like Norway and Sweden. But once those Vikings hopped over to Scotland, they became the MacDonald clan, which was a huge clan. It still is. Anything that has Donald, Donaldson, MacDonald, Domhnaill, all those people, they're all one clan. And then they came over to Ireland, and then they came over here, and they're everywhere. The MacDonald clan is everywhere. But they were a huge deal in Scotland and Ireland, in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages. So, and I've always loved history. And so there were particular things that I was learning about in history that I thought were fascinating, like the Titanic. We also learned in I think it was my senior year in high school, we learned about the Great London Fire in 1666. I think Samuel Pepys wrote about that, how it like was jumping over the Thames. It was this huge, horrible fire, and they know how it started. And Pearl Harbor, I've been to Pearl Harbor and stood over the deck of the Missouri and looked down at it. The Missouri ship is still in commission because it's got a full crew aboard under the water. So, and also my grandpa, Jack McDonald, was a medic in World War II. And he knew a guy who was on the Missouri. His last name was Bucket, I think. He was from his hometown. So I kind of have drawn from a lot of the things that I was interested in, and then I was like, okay, I love. Oh, I also had recently seen the movie, I think, Kate and Leopold. It's got Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan in it, and it's about a guy who um, lives right at the turn of the century. I think he invented the elevator, and then he accidentally gets dragged back to the modern day and runs into a girl, and he just contrasts modern life with life that he lived, and what was good and bad about that. And I thought, well, let's just put that on steroids. Let's bring a guy from the Dark Ages and have him jump forward to all these places that I enjoy visiting or more want to know about, and teach him lessons through these things until he winds up the modern age and the ultimate ending of the story. Of course, it isn't chronological like that. I wanted to do it. I wanted to conceal him more so that you don't quite know why is he reacting like this or that. So it alternates. It's modern and then goes back, and then modern and then it goes back to these various times and these various adventures. Because he starts out being a big jerk. He's worser than Thor in the first one. Because not see, like Thor, I think was just like careless and cocky, but this kid is not brave necessarily, and he'd rather have other people do it, and he's very, 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 very selfish, and so he's just after what he wants and what he wants to do, and he does something that causes his older brother to be killed, and that wasn't supposed to happen. And so a wizard intervenes, and he's like, well, because this gang kid Oleron, he wants a part of this treasure, this Beowulf treasures. Beowulf got a treasure from the dragon at the end of the epic, and the Danish people had it. And then this kid, who's a Scot, he wants that treasure because of a particular dagger that he's been promised will give him great powers. However, the one who promised it to him is essentially the devil. Like, he actually is. He's actually the devil. And if you were to break it down and see it straight, the wizard in the story named Rune, which means like secret, meaning he's like Jesus, which is really fun to play with because it's like a little bit like C.S. Lewis and Aslan, but that's very blatant to me. And in this, he is not blatantly like, I look like Jesus. He looks like a wizard with a long nose and maybe even like a scary wizard. So because he is the way that Oleron perceives him, which is scary and bad. And then he kind of changes as Oleron changes because of what he's forced to go through. He's forced to go forward through time, following clues. Once he'll find a clue, and then once he figures it out, it'll take him forward and to find the next. And eventually, he hopes to find the treasure. But he has to go through a lot. The London Fire of 1666 is something that most people don't know about. But you should check it out. It actually was probably good in the end. It was probably good. This is just a little side note here. So the buildings in London, and this is a little bit after Shakespeare's time. So they were all wood. And then here's the lower floors. And then the next floor was out a little bit more. True. And then the next floor was out a little bit more. True. So that it like made these tunnels of the streets below. And the people in the upper stories could actually hand things to each other through the windows. That's how close they were together. And then like if you didn't want gunk from the chamber pots thrown on your head out the top windows, then you would walk underneath the overhangs. See, so you'd walk under there and you'd be safe. But then they had gutters that went down the center of the street that people would pour their stuff out, and the gutter would, fall into the gutter like that, and then would run into the river, into the Thames. Blech. I mean, I think the only like non-stinky place to live in London would probably have been London Bridge. You could live on the bridge. There were buildings on the bridge, and you could live there, and the air would go there, and then the tide would take the stuff out. But people would say at that time that before you could ever see London, you could smell it. And it was infested with rats. That's why they got the plague every summer, and the queen would leave and go to the country because death waited for you in London. So actually the fire, although some people died, the fire purged London of these wooden, rat-infested, disease-infested buildings that needed to be burnt up. They really did. I'm just sad that people were inside of them, but they burned them up, and then they built things out of stone, which I'm sure some of the things are still there. Of course they are. If they haven't been bombed, they're still there. So anyway, I did a great deal of research for that. So the Titanic portion is correct down to the minute of things happening. So if you want to really immerse yourself in these things, this is a fun book because I did so much research, and I love to just put you right in those situations. So if you like to time travel, even though there's no way to really do that, this is the way to do that. This is your ticket. So yeah, you'll enjoy that one.